千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Daodejing by Lao Tzu. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now. To be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process of the Tao. So the name of the story is The Fighting Rooster. And I'm glad to be sharing this story with you. Here's how it goes. Once upon a time, in ancient China, there was a master trainer of animals who raised fighting roosters for the king, the ruler. The king had one rooster in particular that he was eager to use in a fight. So the king was actually quite the fan of rooster fights. So he commanded that this rooster be trained to be made ready for battle. So the master trainer started to work on this. And after 10 days, the impatient king went to the trainer and asked, "Is the rooster ready to fight?" You could tell that he could hardly wait. But the trainer said, "Not yet, Your Majesty. The rooster is too arrogant and contentious. Not ready yet." So the king had to satisfy himself with waiting, and he waited 10 more days, and then he went back to the trainer. Hey, is the rooster ready to fight? You could tell how eager he was. But the trainer still said, "No, not yet, Your Majesty. Whenever this rooster hears sounds or sees movements from other roosters, he gets excited. He reacts. So no, not ready for battle." So the king respected the decision of the trainer. He went away. He waited again for 10 more days, and then he came back again. "How about now? Is the rooster ready to fight now?" Once again, the trainer said, "No, not yet, Your Majesty." There is anger in his eyes, and there is much aggression in him. So the king had no choice but to wait again. 10 more days passed. Now it's been a total of 40 days. So the king asked again, and this time the trainer gave a different answer. "Your Majesty, he is almost ready." The trainer said, "When other roosters crow, it does not affect him at all. It doesn't change his actions in the least. He stands still, looking like a wooden rooster, like a rooster statue that's been carved from wood. He has all the fighting power he needs. The other roosters don't even dare challenge him. Instead, at the sight of him, they turn right around and they run away in the opposite direction." The end. So the story does not go into what happens in an actual fight, because for Zhuangzi, the point has been made. There is a process. There have been stages that the rooster has gone through. And the point that he wanted to be made is in the story. Specifically, the story is not really about roosters. It's really about us. Let me pull up the correspondence here between story and what Zhuangzi was trying to say about life. So roosters aren't real roosters. It's a reference to you and me. It's a reference to everyone, all human beings. And what about the rooster fights? Not really rooster fights at all. Zhuangzi is really talking about all the different competitive arenas of life. Not about fights between roosters. It's about the contention among human beings. So I talked about it's been 40 days from the beginning to end of the story, representing 4 different stages of transformation. And the transformation go from the external to the internal. So I want to talk about them as stages of maturity in the context of the story, as well as what Zhuangzi was trying to say about life. So stage 1 is the stage of external arrogance. What I mean by external arrogance is that this is the overt display of being arrogant to the world at large. Like everyone can see how arrogant you are when you have this external arrogance. In the story, the trainer says, no, he's not ready. He is still too arrogant. He's too contentious. That's stage 1. It's obvious just by looking at him that there's that arrogance oozing out of this rooster. In life, it's the arrogance that we display when we ourselves lack maturity. Now, I always say that the ego is one of the most difficult lessons in life. And I am no exception to that. It is something that I need to work on as well. So I recognize external arrogance. It's the delusions of the ego. It's the thinking, or even sometimes the saying of, I am the greatest. And this is not based on actual knowledge of being the greatest, but based on deluded thinking. It's all about posturing. It's also about putting up a macho front. Sounds familiar? Even if you haven't done it yourself, you know people who have. It's very common throughout all of humanity. This is stage 1. Let's take a look at stage 2. Still immature. Stage 2 is called reactive. In the story, the trainer says, well, whenever he hears sounds or sees movements from the other roosters, he jumps, he reacts immediately, he gets excited. Okay, now, what happens when you are jumpy and excitable is that you become very easy to distract and hence very easy to manipulate. You are giving these wild reactions out of in response to external stimuli. And this is still immature. This is still a stage where maturity, readiness is very much lacking. Stage 3, internalized arrogance. So this is different from external arrogance. That's very obvious to see. In the story, what the trainer says is that there's anger in his eyes and there is much aggression in the rooster. So this is somewhat better than number 1 in that it's not immediately obvious, but the arrogance and aggression are still there. They're just hidden. In another way, it's actually beneficial because when you have internalized external arrogance, this is where you begin the external cultivational work to transform that. So the key here is that these negative attributes, being arrogant, is still there. It's just that it's hidden. As you work on it internally, eventually transformation occurs, and you are able to deal with them appropriately from the Tao perspective. This leads to stage number 4, readiness, maturity. So what the trainer says in the story is that when other roosters crow, does not affect him at all. He stands still, looking like a wooden rooster. He's got all the fighting power he needs. The other roosters don't dare challenge him. They turn right around and run away. So this is what happens when you have confidence, true confidence that comes from real clarity, real awareness, understanding what's really going on. The detached, calm observer who misses nothing, the confidence that comes from accurate self-knowledge. You're no longer affected by external factors. You are internally driven and motivated. You don't give away anything. You have a lot of depth. You have no need to show off because you are confident. You know what you can do. This is the stage of the great general, the great warrior, those who are good at defeating the enemy. So powerful and skillful, there's no need to go pick fights to prove yourself. So this story corresponds to the lines that we see from this chapter. Those who are good at defeating enemies do not engage them. They don't need to. There's nothing to prove. So that is the story from Zhuangzi. Then I also want to share with you the lines from Sun Tzu Bingfa, what we call the art of war, that will further underline this concept for all of us. We've talked about the story from Zhuangzi. What about Sun Tzu? So here's what he wrote. 百战百胜，非善之善者也。不战而屈人之兵，善之善者也。What does all that mean? Well, let me translate for you one line at a time, and then I will explain on the specific characters, the important characters, exactly what it means. So line 1 is 100 victories from 100 battles. Line 2, not the best of the best. Line 3, to defeat their soldiers without battle. That is the best of the best. So let's think about this for just a moment. So first of all, the overall idea is easily recognized. The conventional thinking is that, well, being able to win all the time, 100%, that should be the absolute best, isn't it? So remember, the mindset of the Tao is what I call the next level thinking. That is why the ancient sages say, no, that is not the best. Defeating enemies without fighting is the actual best. Now, before we get into the details of how that can be done, let me explain the translation. This translation, I would say, is the most accurate imaginable, and I will explain why. So first of all, in the first line, you're noticing 2 characters that are the same, by. That's 100. So the first character and the third character, they're the same. The second character is war or battle. So 百战, that's 100 battles. In the translation, you see it at the end of the line. And then 百胜, the second part of that line, is 100 victories. So literally in the original Chinese, ancient Chinese, it is saying 100 battles, 100 victories. And in the English, it actually reads a little better when you follow the rules, syntactical rules of English, and say 100 victories from 100 battles. So the order is flipped around. That gets done quite a bit. You have to do that quite a bit when you do this translation work. Then the second line, not the best of the best. Let me point out in the second line that you have two iterations of the shan character. The character that we identify first and foremost in this chapter as the good, the great, the excellent, being good or skillful at something. It's repeated twice. So it is saying someone who is being skillful, the skill amongst skills, the skillfulness of skillfulness. We don't necessarily need to use skill or skillfulness because we have a perfectly good expression in English that captures that. Best of the best. So that's why. And then the character in the very first character of the second line, that's a negation character. It means no or not, similar to bu. So this is basically Sun Tzu saying that winning all the time, winning 100%, not the best of the best. That is the counterintuitive statement that many people would find puzzling. Then he explains what is the actual best. Not fight at all, not risk the lives of the soldiers at all. So then one more note is that line 2 and line 4 end with a similar character, with the same character, yeah. That is the character that means the period. It's a punctuation mark. It's a character being used as a punctuation mark. And so the translation includes that as well. So best of the best. Elsewhere, the quote-unquote official or formal translation of the art of war is the acme skill. What? Okay, well, acme means top. So acme skill means the topmost skill, the zenith of skills. So linguistically it works, but boy, does this sound awkward. So now let's stick with this translation and talk about how can you win without firing a shot? There are actually many possible ways. I'll give a few examples. Number one, psychological warfare. That is, demoralize the enemy and defeat them without a single shot being fired. They simply surrender. No fighting necessary when they're sufficiently demoralized. Number two, another possibility, cut off supplies, force a surrender. So again, no need to fight if the other side surrenders. Number three, and this is the ideal in the Tao, remove the reason for the conflict in the first place. Create a win-win situation that benefits all. No need to fight. Turn enemies into friends. That is the ideal in the Tao. And furthermore, because we talked about the effectiveness, the excellence of the general, the warrior, those who are good at defeating enemies, the concept in the Tao is to be able to back any of the above possibilities that we talked about, psychological warfare, cutting off supplies, removing the reason for conflict, back them up with actual war-making ability and total readiness, just like the rooster. The kind of calmness and composure that you have when you reach that level, when you're in that state, that is extremely powerful. And it comes from within. So now I think you can see exactly what Lao Tzu was getting at. It is echoed in the story about the rooster, training the rooster, further echoed in the art of war, when it talks about the ultimate. What is the ultimate warrior? What is the best of all? It's not to actually subjugate or dominate anybody. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.